Morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope everyone enjoyed the super nice weather yesterday. I know we did some work in the yard and then we went on like a big hour-long walk in the woods with the dog and all four of us. So it was a lot of fun. And today looks like it's going to be just as nice. So hopefully we'll do something fun as well today. Okay. First thing before we get started, I know there was some news yesterday about school being canceled for the year. Let me just say, I saw somewhere, I don't remember where it was, that someone posted a quote that said, "School is not canceled for the year, the building is just closed." Okay. And I kind of like that because it's kind of awful right now, right? Because we know now we're not going to go back into our classroom and do all that kind of stuff that we were hoping that we'd get to do. But we're not done learning and being a community for the year, right? We're still going to post videos. We're still going to talk to each other. It just is going to look a little bit different. Okay. And then next week is spring break. I say that because I won't be assigning things next week. I still want you to read and do ExactPath. I'll probably do some videos, maybe just like a read aloud and then doing something, but not like a lot of work since it is your break. And then we're supposed to be getting information from Mrs. Jamerson and even her boss about what online learning is going to look like for the rest of the year. So hopefully next week we'll have some updates for you guys and we can kind of figure out what we're going to do this year. I'm guessing we're going to do something with Zoom. So we're going to start doing Zoom a couple times a week. I know next Monday I think we're going to do one with all of us and Mrs. Reynolds. So whoever wants to participate in that, it'd be awesome to see our faces. And maybe we can plan a little activity with that. Maybe we can do like a show and tell where if you have a pet, bring your pet on camera. That'd be kind of fun to see everyone's pets. So maybe we can plan on doing that. We can go around and introduce our pets to the class and stuff like that. I think that'd be kind of cool. But I know it's a rough time. Some of you guys reached out to me yesterday. And so I know a lot of us are scared. A lot of us are kind of sad that we're not going to go back. But it's going to be okay, right? We're still going to be together. We're hopefully going to stay safe. And we're going to still try to focus on the positives that we're going to enjoy the last part of our fifth grade year together. And whatever that looks like, we'll kind of just roll with it as it happens, okay? Our next chapter we're going to read today is chapter 6. And so remember at the end of the last chapter, her dad ended up passing away. Okay, so kind of in a rough place for Carmen. And then this chapter 6, is almost 4 months later. So we're kind of fast forwarding 4 months. It's January 15th, 7:30 in the morning. Carmen was awake, but she kept her eyes squeezed shut. The mornings were always the hardest. She finally eased her eyes open and took some deep breaths. She listened for Papa's voice in her mind like she did every morning. "Buongiorno, mi ragazza." Good morning, my girl. Good morning, Carmen whispered back. "Hi, Carmi," a little voice chirped. Carmen looked down and 2 sleepy brown eyes peered up at her. It was little Teresa, Tony's 3-year-old sister. "Go back to sleep," Carmen said with a smile. "It's still early." Teresa flashed a gap-toothed grin and closed her eyes. At the end of the bed, Tony's other little sister, Marie, was curled up under a tattered blanket. Carmen reached over and tucked her in tighter. A snore rose up from the floor. That was Tony's 6-year-old brother, Frankie. He was a skinny little bean, but he snored like a giant. He and Tony were asleep on a mattress tucked into the corner. Across the room, the curtain that hid Mr. and Mrs. Grasso's bed was already pulled open. Carmen could hear them talking in the kitchen. This was Carmen's home now, the Grasso's 2-room apartment. She'd been living here since the night that Papa died, when Mr. Grasso carried her upstairs and tucked her into bed with the 2 little girls. There were 7 of them living in here, crammed together like tomatoes in a jar. The noise was constant. The girls' giggles, Frankie's bouncing ball, Mr. Grasso's booming laugh. And the fighting. "Frankie hit me. Marie wet the bed. Teresa's eating a cockroach." No wonder Tony couldn't study. But Carmen knew how lucky she was to be in with the Grassos, who treated Carmen like family. Carmen looked over at Tony, fast asleep with drool dripping out of the corner of his mouth. He had hardly left Carmen's side since Papa died. He'd even started reading The Wonderful Wizard of Oz aloud at bedtime. "It puts the girls to sleep," he said. But Carmen had a feeling he was reading it for her. He somehow sensed that hearing about Dorothy made Carmen feel better, like she wasn't the only girl who felt completely lost. Worse than lost. There were moments every day when Carmen's heart seemed to be crumbling apart, like the church tower in her village after the quake. But then Tony would tell one of his dumb jokes. Frankie would come racing over to show her a new baseball card. The girls would climb onto her lap, or Mr. Grasso would ask her kids to stir the pot of tomato gravy. With all these kids, there was always work to be done. Carmen tried to help Mrs. Grasso out as much as she could, which is what she should be doing now, instead of lying here like a lump. Carmen quickly got dressed. She stared out of the window as she brushed the knots from her hair. Of course, her gaze went straight to the ugly molasses tank rising up in the distance. It was impossible to look out the window and not see it. And now the tank would always remind Carmen of the terrible day Papa got sick. She remembered those strange noises she and Tony had heard, how they'd run away in fear and then fall down laughing. It amazed Carmen to think of how carefree she'd felt on that bright September day. She'd had no idea Papa was sick, that the Spanish influenza had already sunk its fangs into Boston, that they would all soon find themselves caught in the middle of one of the deadliest disease outbreaks in history. The epidemic spread through Boston and across the country and the world. Tens of millions had died so far. Mr. Lawrence told them it was even more deadly than the Black Death, a plague that struck Europe during the time of knights. Here in Boston, hospitals ran out of beds. Schools and theaters and movie houses were shut down to slow the spread. But nothing helped. Bodies piled up in the street. There weren't enough gravediggers to bury the hundreds dying each week. Carmen wasn't the only kid at school who'd lost a parent. Some lost two, and brothers and sisters too. So much had changed since she and Tony stood together in the shadow of the molasses tank. But the tank hadn't changed at all. It was still huge, and ugly, and leaking. Carmen sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress to button up her brand new boots. The Grassos had given them to her for Christmas. Her last boots were so small that her toenails had turned black. Carmen stood up and wiggled her grateful toes. She figured she'd help Mrs. Grasso with breakfast and then head to school with Tony and Frankie. She tiptoed to the kitchen door. She could hear Mr. and Mrs. Grasso talking over their morning cups of espresso. "Carmen's a gem," Mrs. Grasso was saying. "The kids adore her." They were talking about her. Carmen crept closer. "She sure is," Mrs. Grasso agreed. Carmen flushed and smiled a little. "When are we going to tell her?" Mr. Grasso said. "The ship doesn't leave for another week," Mrs. Grasso answered. "No need to worry about the voyage." Carmen froze. "Ship? Worry?" "It's such a long journey," Mr. Grasso said. "It's going to be tough. Italy is very different from here." The hairs on the back of Carmen's neck stood up. "I know," Mrs. Grasso said, "but it's for the best. Carmen and her grandmother will be together again." Carmen stepped back. It was suddenly very hard to breathe. The room started to spin as she understood what they were saying. They were sending her back to Italy. That's the end of the chapter. All right, so today's plan on Friday is going to be doing Exact Path for 10 or 15 minutes. Then it's going to be reading for 25 minutes. So again, that's your independent reading book or on the computer. And then today you're going to start to set up your informational slides. We're going to kind of be think about this as being due next Friday. So you kind of have a week to work on this. So if you want to get it all done today, you can do that. If you want to spread it out and do like maybe a slide a day, that's fine too. But however you want to do it, we want to get these presentations done next Friday. So then not the next week, spring break week, but the week after that, we can start to present these if we want, and then we can figure out how to move on. Okay? So today you're going to set up your slides, and I'll create a slideshow in Google Classroom that's kind of like a model that you can look at that you can kind of model yours on, but you're going to have a total of 10 slides. Okay? And I'll write this down, and I'll also put it together in my own slideshow. Okay? You're going to have your title slide, so it's going to be what your project is about, and your name. So mine would be The Great Molasses Flood of 1919 by Mr. Smith. You'd have an introduction, what's going to introduce your topic. So tell me about your topic. You're going to have your 4 topic slides, so whatever the slides you did research on. So those will be your next 4. So we have a title slide, an introduction, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Your topic slides. Our 7th slide is going to be your fun facts. So you did your fun facts as well. Your 8th slide is going to be your conclusion, so kind of summarizing what we learned about. Your 9th slide is going to be your glossary, so you're going to pick 2 words, not 4 like we normally do. You're going to pick 2 words that go along with your topic. You're going to write them in the glossary, and you're going to write their definitions. So kind of like we've been doing for the word work, you're going to pick 2 words that kind of go along with your topic, and you're going to put them there. So for example, for me, I might put molasses as one of mine because maybe not everybody knows what molasses is. And if you don't know what molasses is, you're not going to really understand my project. And then our 10th slide is our sources slide. So where you got the websites that you got all your information from. So I'd put the I Survived book, and I'd put whatever websites I've been working on to help figure out where I got my information from. Okay, so again, you'll have your 10 slides, and then I want you don't need to do them all today. If you want to get it all done today, that's fine. But it's going to be due, think about it being due, and I'll put this in Google Classroom. It's going to be due next Friday. Okay, so a week from today. Okay. Remember, each slide needs to be a paragraph. Okay, the only ones that don't have to be a paragraph are your title slide, your glossary, and your sources. But your introduction, your topic slides, your fun facts, and your conclusion, those should all be a paragraph of about 4 to 5 sentences. Okay, that's why I told you to make sure that you have enough information that you can write a paragraph about. Okay, have an awesome weekend. Again, I'll still do these videos of a read aloud, even though it's spring break, so because we're all going to be at home anyway, so I might as well. So I'll still do these videos next week, and then I think Mrs. Reynolds and I are going to plan a time next Monday to do a Zoom meeting with whoever wants to join that, and hopefully we see almost all of your faces there. That'd be awesome. Okay, have an awesome weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.